welcome everyone to the After Effects workshop, where you will learn all about the difficult program of After Effects. Okay, so let's begin. So let's start with the difference between Premiere Pro and After Effects, because they seem like similar programs, but they actually have totally different jobs. So Premiere is classified as a non-linear editor, or an NLE in like shorthand, and that's used for organizing large video files, just like throwing audio and video onto a timeline and you'll be done. Premiere Pro is also better at like color grading than After Effects and color correcting. And it's good for like basic stuff, and also multicam, because you can't multicam in After Effects at all. After Effects, on the other hand, is called a video compositing software. Basically, it's just like Photoshop. You just stack a whole bunch of video effects onto like a layered like project just to get the effect that you want. And it's really hard to edit video like you would try to do in Premiere in After Effects, because the timeline is just completely different. It's set up totally different from Premiere Pro, and that's why it's like a lot easier to just like work in Premiere Pro, take a file that you need to like add effects onto, and then do it in After Effects. So yeah, in After Effects you have visual effects, like you can make people fly, you can get rid of wires, you can like erase like parts of walls, like to make them, it's like to get rid of holes in walls, and like maybe you have a dent in a wall and you don't want that to show up in your film, you can erase it there. Yeah, and animation, of course, so motion graphics, stuff like that. Okay, now here's the main layout of After Effects. It's sort of like Premiere in that like the bottom is like the timeline and everything that you can edit. To the left, in Premiere it's usually bottom left, but this is like project window, effect controls, stuff like that. To the right is the effect control, the effect window, so you can like find different effects, like wire removal, keying, and just a whole bunch of different stuff. And there's like thousands of things to do with the effects in Premiere, I mean in After Effects. So like you would have to experiment with each individual effect to like really learn about all of them. And in the middle we have the composition window, which is where you see basically what you're doing. It's like Premiere in that so you can like watch the video that you're making. And then you have the toolbar window at the very top, where the tools are, obviously. Okay, so here are the tools for After Effects. They look a lot like the tools for Premiere Pro, and that's mostly because a lot of them are carryovers. You have the home button, the selection tool, the hand tool, which is different from the selection tool in that you can navigate with it. You have the zoom tool, and then the rotate tool. These two tools next to the rotate tool are camera like manipulators, because in After Effects you can have a digital camera, so like you can make movements within a scene, and it's really complex. If you guys want, that'll be After Effects workshop part 2. But you also have the shape tool, which is this one, pin masking, or pin tool, which masks things out. So if you want to cut someone out of a background, the way that I did it, which took forever. You also have the text tool, which adds text, brush tool, clone stamp tool, and eraser tool, which are all just like drawing on pictures basically, or drawing on video. You have the roto brush, which is, it's pretty much like a better masking tool, because the roto brush cuts things out and it like calculates the movements so that you won't have to do what I did and cut individual frames of people out. And then the puppet pen tool, which we will be talking about later, because that's how you animate really easily in After Effects. Okay. And okay, so do you guys know what keyframing is? Raise of hands, anything? No? Yes? No? I'm going to assume not. Oh, Bailey, you know what keyframing is? Okay, so do you want to unmute and possibly give us a quick and dirty example, or if you don't want to, I can just go ahead.
Isn't it kind of just like a basic animation through key points on where each motion occurs?
Yep, that is exactly what it is. Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so the way it works in After Effects is like After Effects calculates between keyframes. So you could do like a really big wide movement. Like for example, when I do like this, if I only keyframed here and here, where my hand is at the end, After Effects would just guess and it would just make the motion automatically, which is really amazing and very helpful so that we don't have to have like thousands of keyframes for me waving. Okay, so keyframing in After Effects, and we'll go into more detail about this like once the demos start, but keyframing in After Effects, this little timer thing over here, this stopwatch, it tells you when something can be keyframed. And when you create keyframes, all you do is click this, it turns blue, and wherever you are on the timeline, it makes a keyframe there. And this little blue play header tells you where it's going to drop the keyframe. And next to the, at the bottom where my mouse is, next to this active keyframe, this is how you move between keyframes. So this one on the left goes to the previous keyframe. The one in the center drops a keyframe, like puts it wherever your playhead is. And then the one on the right goes forward a keyframe. And that's just how you navigate in After Effects when you have keyframes on. And yeah, and make sure that when you're keyframing, this is just for future reference, when you're keyframing, always move the playhead forward when you want to change something. Otherwise, you'll just be on the same place trying to animate and then nothing's happening. Okay, so animation in After Effects, if you just have like keyframes, After Effects will guess at them, but the animation might not be as smooth as you want and it may look really robotic. So what we have is something called temporal and spatial interpolation, which sounds like a really hard concept, but do any of you guys know what it means? Thumbs up if you do. If not, I will continue. So temporal interpolation is basically how keyframe effects change over time. So that's in After Effects, that's something called easy ease in, and ease out. So easy or ease in is it's usually put at the end of animations and it smooths out when the animation goes into where it's gonna stop. So if I have two keyframes, well, I have the animation in the next one, but if I have two keyframes and like I don't want it to like make a harsh stop, I would put an easy ease on the end frame, an easy ease in, an easy in, ease in, sorry, I'm messing that up. But yeah, and that'll slow it down so when it gets closer, so it won't smash, it'll just go like to a like nice, like smooth stop. Okay, and ease out is the opposite of ease in. It goes at the beginning of animations and it like smooths the transition from coming out of an animation. So instead of like slamming into it, it'll go like ease out, then go in. And easy ease is like, it just automatically applies both. It may not be to the exact effect that you want, so you have to play around with it, but it's like an automatically generated, like smooth on both ends of your animation. Okay, so spatial interpolation is like, it's just basically smoothing over the movement itself. So temporal changes like the effect over time, but spatial interpolation only smooths the movement. So basically, instead of me waving like a robot, it'll like smooth it out so I go up like a curve instead. And I'll have examples in the next slide. So temporal interpolation, this is easy ease. As you can see, both like ways that it's moving, it's slowing down before it hits the actual edge of the frame. And compared to ease out, which ease out is the one that goes in the beginning. So it's slow in the beginning and then it slams into the wall. Okay. And then explode out, which is ease in, basically that it starts really fast and then it slows down. Okay. And then this is spatial interpolation. Basically, it looks like the DVD. I don't know if you guys even know what the DVD thing was, but like basically it was the DVD like logo would bounce onto different points and it would never like go in a curve. It would only go point to point to point. So spatial interpolation smooths that out. So this like GIF is like really slow, but instead of like bouncing point to point, it curves right under that point. And you have to do that with like changing the path it's complex. After Effects is really complex, but this is what it basically looks like. So without spatial interpolation, it looks linear. It's just point to point to point. With spatial, it smooths everything out so that it looks like a little curve and it moves a lot smoother and it looks more natural. Okay, so next, animating text. This is where the demos begin. So I'm actually going to open up this really quickly and I'll start a new project. There we go. Okay. So are you guys able to still see my screen? Yes. Yes, I think you guys are. You should be able to at least. Okay, so Okay, so here is the tool, the text tool for creating text. And all you have to do is once you have it selected is click somewhere and it'll automatically make an empty text layer. And then you can start typing. This is text. And that's basically how you use the text layer, okay? Or the text tool. So for animating text, what you do is once you select the text tool and you start typing the text out, you can, once you start typing the text out, sorry, all these windows popped up. Okay, once you start typing the text out, a text layer will appear like it did when I clicked on the actual composition window. And once that appears, you have all of these different properties once you open up the two windows. So opening one will open up any effects and it will also open up the transformation tools or the transformation options. And once you have that open, you can see all of these things have stopwatches, which once again means that you can animate with them. So the main ones that people usually use to animate are position, scale, rotation, and then opacity. So position obviously means like moving across the screen. Scale means scaling up or down. Rotation just means rotation. And opacity means how transparent an image is. So yeah, those are the basic animation options. And once you start keyframing within the timeline, you can change different things about a text, whether it moves and everything, but you also, once again, I will reiterate, you have to move the timeline playheader forward or backwards so you make sure that you're not just animating on one spot. So I'm going to do a quick demo of how to actually animate the text that we just created. So as you can see, here we have our text. Okay, so like I said, we start by opening up the tool panel down here, and then we open up the transform. So with the transform, we now have access to all of these different changeable, editable settings. Okay, so let's say that I just want my text to move from left to right. So I'm just going to start it here, keyframe that, go forward on the timeline to make sure that the actual animation takes place. And then I will change the actual position. I will change the, oof, why is it not showing up? Well, regardless, I can drag it on this. And you see this little line that appears? This line here signifies the actual animation itself. So the text is moving across that line to show that the animation is actually occurring. So when I play it, it's just moving straight across. And we don't have any easy ease or anything on because the easy ease are added once you highlight. And you can right click, keyframe assistant, and they're all here. So I'll just do like an easy ease because it automatically adds them to both and it just automatically does it. So now we have animated text. Simple, easy, quick to do. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so does anyone know what lower thirds are? Lower thirds, any idea? Thumbs up if you do, silence if you don't. Okay, so Steeltown Entertainment knows what lower thirds are. Do you want to inform the class about what lower thirds are?
Lower thirds. So when you're recording, you go by the rule of thirds. So lower third should be like the bottom part of the frame.
And what's in it? What are they used for? What is contained in the lower third?
I don't know. I just know that it's the bottom part of the frame.
Okay, so we'll go over what's actually supposed to be in there now. So lower thirds are normally, like it was said, they're in the lower third of the screen, and they usually add more information to what's going on within the frame itself. So they can be graphics of someone's name and their position. They could also be like headlines are usually like in the lower thirds of like newscasts. So it could be like, oh, something amazing happened in the bottom of it. Also, they can do different things. So they usually look a lot different, and they have different descriptions, headlines. They contribute a whole lot of different information based on the media that you're trying to produce. Yeah, and they can look completely different. You can have your logo in them. You can have like a little symbol in them. It can be whatever you basically want. Okay, so making lower thirds inside of After Effects. Basically, it's similar to making text, except for you add some shapes. That's pretty much the only difference. And you want to move them obviously to the lower third, but like, yeah. So always make sure whenever you make lower thirds that they contrast against the footage well, because otherwise people aren't going to be able to see, or like their attention is not going to be brought to something that's not high contrast compared to the footage that you have. So if your footage is mostly dark, but you want to lower thirds, you would want to have a lighter, maybe like not pure white, but like you would want to try to have like a light background for your text so that the text stands out and the people's eyes are instantly attracted to what's different on the frame. So yeah, in this example, I had red background with white text over it. And you could change the colors of the text. That's usually over here. But yeah, so normally you kind of want to like stick with not having highly colorful text unless it's like for emphasis. But yeah, white and black are like safe colors for text, especially if you have a background to make it stand out from the footage. Yeah. And in the layer window, what you would want to make sure is that the text is always above the actual shape itself from the shape layer that you draw. Like this square in the layer window is lower than the text because the text needs to be on top of it so that we can see it. Okay. And then this is just a simple fade on effect. So what you would do is you would go to the beginning of the frame, mark the opacity as 0, so it starts off completely invisible. Then you go forward, drag it to 100, and make it so it's visible. But the thing is, the important thing to remember is when you're doing something like this is you need to go forward again and drop another keyframe, just so it stays at 100% and doesn't automatically go back to 0. So, and then once you have that second point of like 100% opacity, then you can lower it back down. And I'm going to do a quick demo of that. Okay. So let's say that this is our lower third. Maybe I should like add a little background. Let me see. Shape. Rectangle. And wait, oh, it's masking. Okay. So make sure you have the layer of the text deselected so that it doesn't try to mask. Does anyone know what masking means? Because this is just a day of questions. No? No, I'm guessing no. Okay, masking is basically like, it's basically you taking scissors and you're cutting around an image. It's basically, yeah, it's basically just that. So if I was masking the text and I only wanted a bit of the text to show, I would go onto either the pen tool, the shape tool, or something, and I would just go over. I would select the text first, and I would go over it. And so only what's inside of this box will appear. That's masking, basically. Okay, so we don't currently want to mask. We want to have a layer of like any color. So for this one, I'm just going to draw a red shape. And as you can see on this bottom part, that the shape layer is above the text layer. Therefore, you can't see the text. So what we do to fix that is that we just go ahead and drag this below. And now we can see our text. And this is going to be something that I'm just going to go over really quickly, but I'm going to go in depth once we do Puppet Pen. And once we have our like micro animation planned out. So this thing right here, this little swirly tool, I guess that's what it's called, is called the pick whip. Pick whips are important because they allow you to link two things together. So since I don't currently have anything pick whipped to anything in here, what I can do is go into transform, and I can just drag this around, and the text isn't moving because they're not together. So the pick whip allows you to parent two objects or more than two objects together. So what I want to be able to move everything around as one, I want the text to be the child of the shape layer. So I'm going to take the pick whip and make the shape layer the parent of the text. So you see that the thing next to it changed, the little drop-down menu changed. And now the shape layer is the parent of the text tool. So if I were to just select the shape layer and then move it around, both of them move together, but they're still completely separate. So if I wanted maybe to scale this up or something, scale up text, I could still scale it up, but they would still move together regardless. And parenting is really important when it comes to animating things. So actually, let's see. Ooh, because it's not, the shape layer is not parented to the text. The text is parented to the shape layer. So the shape layer won't move. Okay, so now that we've done actual lower thirds making, usually lower thirds are pretty stable. There's like a little outro animation to some of them. But for the most part, they stay relatively stable on the lower thirds of the screen, of course. So I guess I'll just really quickly run through and demo for you what I was going over. So the shortcut for showing opacity when you're in the actual timeline, the timeline / layer area of it, is T. So you see how that got rid of everything else? I'm wondering why it won't let me affect anything. But there we go. Okay, so to change the opacity is T. So what I want to do is start by making my keyframe. That's number one. Always make a keyframe for the very beginning. And then, like I said, I would drag it to 0. I would also have to do the same thing for the text, but we'll just start out with the shape layer and then we'll copy everything over. So now that we're at 0, we'll go forward 2 seconds and then we'll drag it back up to 100%. Okay, then we'll go forward again and drag it and keep it at 100% by dropping this keyframe with this middle button right here. Okay, and then we'll go forward a little bit more and then fade it back out to 0. Okay, so let's look at how that fades on the square. I know the text is moving. I guess I'll just go ahead and get rid of the keyframe. Here's something to be careful of. If you click the active stopwatch, it'll get rid of all your keyframes. So make sure you don't do that if you're not meaning to. So there it fades on, it stays up, and then it lowers back out. And with keyframes in After Effects, all you have to do to copy them is to click in this area and select all of them by dragging a box. It's just regular selecting as if you were in another program. And then you Control-C or Command-C to copy. Then you click on the layer that you want to paste the attributes onto. Click T to open up its opacity, and then Command or Control-V. And that drops everything, all the information automatically onto there. So they both fade together. Okay. Now, when you're pasting attributes, be careful that you make sure that your playhead is at the same place as the start of the other setting change, because otherwise if I was a little bit off when I was pasting the attributes for the text opacity, what would have happened is it would have just pasted it wherever my playhead was. So the the rectangle would have started fading on before the text, and it would fade out like before the text as well. Okay, so now that we have that, we will go back to here. Okay, so puppet pen animation. Puppet pen animation is like the easiest way to animate things in After Effects. It's so easy, like it makes literally any type of animation possible, and it's so nice, and After Effects just automatically calculates everything, so you don't have to sit there and go frame by frame and change everything. So puppet pen, all you have to do is have like an image with a clean cut out image. So something that's keyed out already, basically taking out a green screen, can also be animated with puppet pen, because all it does is just distort what you have in it. Okay, so for puppet pinning, there are two basic things you have to be aware of. Is the expansion of the mesh, because all it does is lay like a couple triangles onto your image, and those triangles are what you use to distort things. So expansion controls how far out the mesh is. So if I had my hand and this was all the way up to maybe like 12 or something, the mesh would be all the way out here, and it'd be distorting my face, it'd be distorting everything that I have that's remotely close to my hand. But if I made it small, which is like what it's usually default to is 2, that'll mean that it's only like a couple centimeters around my hand, and it has no chance of like really distorting anything nearby as long as it's not directly on top of it. And density, it just controls the amount of triangles. It's like important for complex animation, but if you're just doing some simple like flat animations, it's not that important. So I would just say keep it at the default. Okay, so you see at the bottom right, we have this image that I have animated with the puppet pen tool. All it is just a dog's tail wagging, just a random stock dog wagging its tail. So with puppet pen, it allows you to animate anything. Like if I wanted to, I could make the dog like bop its head up and down, but all it's doing is distorting the image. So you see on the left, this is just a still image of the dog. So if I tried to, I couldn't like make the dog like blink or anything, because that would take me basically creating new pictures for it to animate. You can make it wiggle, you can do all different types of things, but you can't make it fundamentally change. Okay, so these are the options underneath the puppet pen tool. The main ones that we have to focus on are the pen tool, the starch tool, and then the overlap tool. So for the pen tool, that's where you drop important anatomy parts. So as you can see on the dog, here's one. I'll just point to them because it's kind of hard to see. So there's one on the ears. So if I wanted to make the ears wiggle, I would grab this point and wiggle it. It's making joints. And joints basically allow you to move things. So, but like, yeah, basically joints allow you to move things. Then you have, you add joints on places you don't want the image to transform unintentionally. So if my arm didn't have bones in it and I only had one joint, the rest of my arm would just flop alongside. But if I wanted this to both be joints, the only thing that would really be flopping around are my fingers and stuff. So yeah. Okay. And then we have the starch pen tool, which is basically telling After Effects, I don't want this to be a noodle. Make it like bone, make it not move. We don't want it to be flopping around, so we want starch pins to make sure that every part of this is like dense. There's no movement here. Yeah. You can also, with the starch tool, you can change the extent that the starch affects. So if I had like one starch pin in the middle of my arm, I could control whether I want it to go all the way down, which would make my entire arm completely like straight, or I can control like, oh, I want it to go all the way up to my palm because that's where, you know, it's pretty stiff. I mean, I guess if I wanted to animate waving, it would have to not be stiff, but yeah. Okay, and then the last one is the overlap pen. So basically After Effects is gonna, if I try to drag like this dog's leg in front of its face, After Effects would just guess which one you wanted unless you use the overlap tool to determine which one is in the front. You're adding like depth information to let it know, hey, the leg is in front of the face, or the face is in front of the leg, or something like that. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do a quick demo of Puppet Pen. Okay, so for this, I have already imported some assets that we're going to be using for the actual like animation at the end of this. So this is a little cute little dragon boy that we have that we're going to use. Okay, so if we wanted to puppet pin him to move around, all that we have to do is, oops. Let's see. This is. Okay, so all that we have to do is click on the puppet pin tool, which is Command P or Control P, and then we just add our points. So the most important points usually are like you wanted something in the center, you want something at the feet, and if you have like any other extremities, like the tail, maybe you want something there, and we want the head. So we don't want the head to move without us moving it, pretty much. Okay, and then let's say that we're currently on the starch tool. So let's say the leg's pretty stiff. You don't want the leg to move. So we're just adding a few points just to make sure that After Effects knows, hey, legs aren't noodles. So, and we're gonna add some to the head as well so that it doesn't distort as much. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so let's go back to the puppet pen tool and let's see how that turned out. So now we can lift up the leg and put it back down. And then we could lift up the other leg, but that also distorts the rest of the little tail we have because we don't have a pin to stop it from doing that. So what we do is we just click, add another pin. And then now we can move it a little bit easier. It's not really distorting the tail as much, but yeah. Okay, now when it comes to Puppet Pen, the reason why After Effects Puppet Pen is like really great, if you hold Command or Control, this little stopwatch while you're over like one of the yellow joints, the stopwatch will appear. And once you click and move the point, it'll automatically animate everything like immediately. And it's really amazing. See this little like gray outline? That just lets me know that I'm animating right now, okay? And you see all of these hundreds and hundreds of points that are on here right now. That just tells us the movements that I just did. And once we go back to the beginning, it'll show the little dragon boy lifting his leg over the text. Okay, and as you can see, it's going pretty slow because it's rendering out all of those keyframes, all of those movements. It still has to render them, but you don't have to hand animate things, which is a lot better than you actually sitting down and dragging the little dragon boy's legs all the way up and all the way back down. And if we look at it after it's rendered a little bit, it's a lot faster. But you see that there is a little bit of distortion on the face, but that's nothing that a few more like little joints can't solve. So yeah. Okay, and now that we have that, okay, so this next part is just gonna be us talking about working between Premiere Pro and After Effects, because Adobe knows that you're gonna probably need both. So it made sure to make them work well together or attempt to work well together. Okay, so dynamic link, you probably have seen it when you're going through the different options on the file menu of Premiere Pro. Basically, dynamic link merges the two. So it takes a clip that you may have in Premiere, pulls it into After Effects, and allows you to edit it. It's really, really nice, but make sure that you are completely done with whatever you're doing in Premiere, because once it takes that into After Effects, you won't really be able to edit things like audio unless you just like somehow pulled the audio completely out. Okay, yeah, so these are the different options that are listed here under dynamic link. So you have replace with After Effects composition, which is exactly what it sounds like. It takes your footage that you've highlighted from Premiere Pro, brings it into After Effects, and then it's just what's there is there. Whatever you're doing in After Effects is automatically going to happen to the footage. So yeah. Okay. New After Effects composition basically means it'll add an After Effects composition within your project folder in Premiere, and then it'll just open After Effects and have like its own composition for you to work in. And that doesn't require footage. But replace an After Effects with an After Effects composition does require you to have footage highlighted. Okay, so in the last option, import After Effects composition. So you can go through your file browser and pull any After Effects composition that you've already made before the Premiere file and just import it into Premiere and then drag that onto your timeline like a video. Okay, so here's some tips for working with dynamic link, because sometimes it's a bit finicky and it can cause Premiere to crash because Premiere just doesn't like a lot of work, so it just crashes regardless. Okay, so always make sure to save in general, but save when you're working in After Effects so you can view the changes in Premiere, because it'll help Premiere say, okay, you're temporarily done with this. Here's the most updated clip that we have from After Effects, and it'll help you like if you want to view it in Premiere alongside other footage. Okay, make sure that the After Effects composition matches the video specs of the Premiere project. So make sure that your frame rates are the same, your aspect ratio, and your resolution, because you don't want to import like, what is it, a 480p like After Effects composition into something that's supposed to be 4K, because that's very hard to scale up well. Okay. So, and always save often. After Effects uses a lot of computer power and could crash Premiere, especially if you're working on like heavily animated things, like I usually am. I'm usually working on a lot of animations, so it can slow down your computer and then Premiere will just decide I've had enough and just quit. So be careful of that. Okay, and just like in Premiere Pro, as Steeltown has taught you, make sure that you're working with folders and layers so that you can make sure that you're organized. Because if you have 100 different images called like dog 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like you're gonna get mixed up eventually when you're dragging them into the After Effects timeline, applying these effects and everything. It's gonna get confusing. So maybe name one of them purple dog. If you're going to make that one the purple dog, don't name it just in sequential order. It's very important to name things so that you make sure that you know what the actual files are. Okay, so final tips for working with After Effects. So learn the shortcuts. A lot of them are carryovers from Premiere. And you can also hover over the toolbar just to see what the actual shortcuts themselves are. They're really easy. A lot of them are carriers from Premiere, or a lot of them are like common sense. Most programs use these shortcuts. So like Command C or Control C, that's what most programs use. So it's not any different in After Effects. Okay, so like I said in the previous one, always name files in After Effects because it'll make it so much easier when you know which one is the purple dog without having to open that image. Okay. And once you're done with animations in After Effects, always render them or export them with Media Encoder to make sure that Premiere doesn't have to do any more work than it needs to. You know, if you're not working with Dynamic Link, this is the best way to do it. You export them first, then drag the footage, because it'll be considered footage by then, into Premiere, into your project window. And that'll save time because Premiere would have to render After Effects frames and then it will just take forever. So it's better to render them beforehand and like just make Premiere have to render out the same video. It's much easier. And then parent objects / layers that you want to move together to one main part with the pick whip tool, which is what I went over before. And in After Effects, the up and down arrows don't actually go like forward and backwards like they did in Premiere. In order to make them do that, you have to hold down Command or Control to move forward and backwards one frame at a time. Otherwise, like if you go up and down or left or right in After Effects, you'll be affecting the position of the object that you have selected. So if you like are confused as to why it's not going, you're probably moving your image 100 times to the right, and it's just like you're gonna have to reset all those 100 times, hope that Premiere has enough history like points to refer back to so that you can go back to the beginning. Okay, and then the last thing is hold shift when moving in the timeline to lock to keyframes. So if you're dragging the play header to try to like, which keyframe was it, you hold shift, and then you can lock onto certain keyframes that you have animated, which will make navigating within like a composition really easy. Okay, and there are hundreds of thousands of effects that like you can make using anything that's in After Effects. Like you can make people's eyes glow, you can make someone explode. There's like there's so many things you can do in After Effects, and there's like hundreds of tutorials on YouTube that'll explain how to do specific effects. But all of these are able to be done in After Effects as long as you learn the effects themselves. Okay, so that is the extent of our lecture. However, now we will do the main part of it, which is the workshop micro animation. So here are all the assets that we currently have. So we have the cute dragon boy, and there are his hands, which we can animate. We have the turtle holding the boom mic. We have the ghost holding the slate. And then we have our lights and our background and everything. So what we're basically gonna do is take everything that we've learned and basically implement it into this. And we're only gonna spend like 10 minutes on this. So just so you can go ahead and figure this out. So basically, does anyone have any ideas on text that they may want to show, like maybe a lower third? You guys can unmute, by the way, because this is like a discussion part. Mario, do you have any ideas?
Sorry, I didn't have my audio on until now, so sorry.
That's okay. Do you have any ideas for like text that we may want to display? Because all we're going to be doing now that we've gone through the lecture itself is we're just going to be animating this scene and like giving it text and basically making it a video.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have anything.
Okay. Kiora, do you have any ideas? Yoni? Bailey?
I'm not sure if I have any ideas, but what I can tell you is that I'm sort of a beginner to this. I'm doing everything I can to keep up. And what's more, I think I'm going to have to start taking more classes on those.
Okay, yeah, but just like any ideas, because I'm going to be doing the animation. I'm just going to be walking through animating everything.
It
So
seems as though whatever you could do with After Effects, whatever happens, anything is possible. Is this true?
Well, I mean, in terms of what? Like adding effects to videos?
Yeah, and just making the pictures move and having text move and having so much stuff going on.
Yeah, After Effects is really good for just like that's why I say it's like Photoshop for video, because there's so much that you can do in terms of like the different effects. Like under the effects and presets, like there's so many things. Like you can make like snow, you can make rain for a video and it'll look realistic as long as you like play with the settings. Yeah, basically anything's possible with After Effects.
Because as soon as I have my Storyfire network up and going with my cameraman aboard, I would like to have someone create an intro and an outro, whether it's for that or YouTube, because that's what I'm looking for.
Or we just taught you how to basically do most of the parts in the outro other than the audio. That's like basically the only thing that After Effects isn't good at, is adding audio.
Okay.
So I guess if no one has any ideas, I guess I can throw out general ideas of like how we can animate this. So basically we have our hundreds of different layers, and guess what? They're all labeled to what they are, and they're all labeled correctly. So let's just say we want the ghost to float in front of the dragon. Okay? So in order to do this, we're going to go to the transformation part, of the ghost. And I'm going to close the puppet. So, and then we're going to go to the, okay, then we're going to go into the settings, and we're going to change the position. So as you can see, we're floating the ghost, but you know what we're not floating? The hand, because the hand hasn't been parented to the ghost. So the hand is its own entity right now. So to fix this, we're going to use the pick whip. So we're going to make the hand the child of the ghost so that they move together. Okay? So we're going to float the ghost. So we're going to see this now. Now both of them move together. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and begin keyframing everything. So let's start. We're at 0, 0. So we're going to keyframe the position. So drop our keyframe, then move forward. We'll say like 2 seconds. That's probably a bit too long, but 2 seconds. And then we'll move the ghost to the right in front of the dragon, because he has to slate whatever we're filming. So with this, we're just using the same aspects that were taught in the text animation, just for like a ghost. Okay, so now what we have is that the ghost moves in front of the dragon. Okay, so once we get to that stopping point, let's say we want the ghost to actually clap the slate. So hand top is what I called the top part of the ghost's hand, because it's linked with the actual slate itself. So in order to animate that the slate is being clapped, I'm going to go to the puppet pin. Okay, so since we have hand top selected, we can drop the different joint parts. So parts that we don't want to move really. So these are the two parts, the two important points of the actual slate itself. So this point would normally be joined to the bottom of the slate, but right now, since it's not, so we can animate it, it's not currently joined. So the next thing that we want to do is make sure, actually let's just see what it looks like without actually adding starch to it. So this is how it animates. It's a little wiggly, it stretches out a lot, it could look a bit weird, and that's not really what we want from our slate. We want our slate to stay the same. So we're gonna add starch pins to make sure that the different parts of the slate are like pretty like dense. They don't move much. Okay. So then we go back to the one that allows us to move the joints, and let's see how that is. So you see there's a little bit of bend to it, but that's like, you can say that that's just motion bending. So now we can animate this. And the way to animate with puppet pin is holding down command. And once you see the timer, all you do is slam it down. And now we have our animation. So let's see how that actually looks. It'll take a little bit because it's rendering. And there we go. We've animated a slate clap. Okay, and that's what it looks like a little bit faster. There we go. Okay, so now that the slate clap is done, we have to get our ghost out of there, because the slate's not going to be in the main part of the actual video itself. So to do that, you go back to the ghost, go back to its transform, and we see its position down here. So now let's just drop a keyframe so it stays in the same place until this point. And then we'll go forward and make it go back right off to the side. So we're going to drag this back to the left, and let's make sure it's completely out of the shot. So there we go. Now the ghost is completely out. Okay, so here's our little animation. The ghost comes over here, claps the slate, and then leaves. And if we want to add the smoothness of like an easy ease, all I have to do is highlight everything, right click, Keyframe Assistant, easy ease. And it'll add that to all the keyframes that are highlighted, so that our ghost moves a little bit smoother, and then he slows down and he eases back out. Okay, so now that we have our slate clap, let's add some information so that people know who's inside of the scene. So maybe this is like a mockumentary sort of thing, or like maybe it's like looking at the process of making a documentary. So let's make a lower third. just for, let's make a lower third because the dragon is our main person. Oop, I was trying to mask. So I need to deselect this layer, deselect all layers. Okay. And then make our mask, or make our lower third shape. So let's instead, here's where you can change the color and the stroke of the actual shape itself. So you can change the color here. That gray is like, it doesn't stand out enough. Maybe should it be black? That stands out because everything else is like really bright. So move that shape down to the lower third of the frame. And then let's just name our dragon. So Mr. Dragon, let's just go with something basic. So this is going to be Mr. Dragon. So to the right, we can see that here are the areas where you can edit the text. Make sure that you have the text selected before you edit them, but I can change like the size of it. I can change the font. So say I wanted, sure, we're going for like a technology-esque sort of font. So there's Mr. Dragon. The text is fine being like pure white because like it has to stand out against the black background. Yeah, so there's our text. So what we're gonna do, here's another thing that you can do in After Effects to edit multiple things at once, basically. So you can hold Command or Control and select two different things or multiple different things if you click on them. And then we'll make this fade in. So the shortcut again for opacity is T, and then we will begin keyframing. And whatever you do to one of them, it's going to do to both of them because we have them both selected. So keyframe, go forward. Actually, let me make it fade in. So 0, go forward. Let's do it after the ghost starts to leave the frame. Set it to 100. Oops, gotta reselect them. Set it to 100. And then go forward and make it maybe fade out, like around here. Oh, set our other keyframe. And then go forward. And then make it fade out. So now we have our little animated part, Mr. Dragon. I probably should add another keyframe just so that it stays at 0 until after like the slate clap or around near the slate clap, so that we make sure that it doesn't fade in too early. And then there we go. So there's our lower third for Mr. Dragon. Oops, the opacity wasn't down enough on this one. So go to the next keyframe, and then next keyframe again, and we see that it's not at 0, it's at 7%, so let's drag it down all the way to 0 so it disappears completely. And because we're already on top of the keyframe over here, it'll automatically just reset the keyframe and make the whole keyframe 0 so that it automatically goes all the way back down. Okay, so the last thing that we're gonna do, maybe let's animate a little clap to explode from when the slate hits. Okay, so to do that, let's make another text layer. So right here near the clap, we're just gonna type clap, and we're gonna make it bright yellow because it has to stand out. So let's see if that stands. Oh, I don't have a text selected, therefore the change didn't happen. Okay, there we go. So let's see, right, maybe that wouldn't stand out. So this is a part of like playing around with After Effects. You have to figure out what actually would be high contrast. Maybe red would be the best. Who knows? We're just experimenting. So we have the clap here. Okay. So now that we have that clap, we're going to animate it. We don't want it to happen before the clap of the slate. So let's make it invisible up to this point. So remember, T is opacity. Turn on that keyframe, set it down to 0, and then let's watch the clap. Clap started there, or like that's where it is. So we're going to actually set an early keyframe, and then we're going to go forward like 1 frame, and then make it 100 so that it just automatically appears. So you can see clap. or I could like move that a little bit closer since the clap happens earlier, and drag it a little bit back. There we go. Clap. There we go. So that's good. And then we want it to disappear, maybe like a couple of seconds, like before the ghost starts moving is where we want it to disappear. So the ghost moves here. So let's set our keyframe for 100, drop 100 keyframe, and then go forward once, and then make it 0. So now we can see that that looks like a clap, and then it's gone. Or once again, it's set to 7 or 13 this time. But yeah, now it's gone. So basically what we've just done is we've had our own like text show up. We've had lower thirds added. We've animated with puppet pin. Yeah, so that's pretty much the whole lesson. So do you guys have any questions about After Effects? Because I'm thinking about doing a more in-depth one, maybe one where I actually show things like making things disappear inside of like footage, like say if you have like a prop cup like Game of Thrones that wasn't supposed to be there, that you need to get rid of. There are ways of doing that. So do you guys have any questions or any suggestions for the next After Effects workshop?